At the turn of the century, life expectancy was approximately 38 years, and it took about 4 years for information to double. Today's life expectancy is 87 years of age, roughly, and technology doubles every 2 months. No, every 2 months. So we are now at the vertical area of the curve where new information is accelerating so quickly. We're right about here. Okay. So we're almost at the vertical component where virtually daily we have new information about how our cells work and how our genes work and what the aging process is about. But first, we all talk about health, degrees of health. So what's wellness? Well, if we look at the biological or genetic aspect of wellness, what we're really looking at is how do cells age? And my whole focus is on cellular aging. So cells age at a normal rate. When they age normally, you feel good. Okay, you're basically in a state of wellness. Very few people today are in that state because they don't eat correctly, they don't exercise, they're stressed, and they're in an environment, a 21st century environment was one in which we as humans were not evolved to live in. So anti-aging is when we are able to actually have cells age better than the normal, or actually slower, if you will. And with that, we've started to learn how to use phytochemicals, certain compounds that actually can alter gene expression, and particularly DNA damage and DNA damage rates and DNA repair rates. Age reversal is about how do we actually get into the software of the cell so we can change that and actually reverse the cellular aging process. We've done that, and I'm going to show you evidence and proof of that. Okay. So aging is the single biggest risk factor for virtually every significant human disease on the planet. And this is where it all begins. In my books, particularly the Breaking the Aging Codes and the textbook I have for physicians, I talk about the real secret to this is learning how to control aging in one cell, because if you know how to really work the concepts of cellular aging for a cell, you can do it for 100 trillion cells, which is really what makes up your body. I'd like to just show you this video. I had the honor of being one of the key presenters for Discovery Channel, where Stephen Hawkins was a host of this. This was shown globally about a year ago, and it really highlights the science behind what I'm going to talk about today for both healthy cell, stem cells, and, if you will, anti-aging in the future.
I relish the rare opportunity I've been given to live the life of the mind. But I know I need my body, and that it will not last forever. As we age, and we make copies of cells, tiny errors creep into our genes. This process seems inevitable, but stem cell researchers disagree.
One of them is Dr. Vincent Giampapa. He believes our body's own natural reserves of stem cells can stem the tide of decay.
The origin of the aging process really starts in our stem cells, because that is the reservoir of the regenerative power and the ability to have our body cells renewed and repaired as we age.
The stem cells we have in our adult bodies are not all powerful like embryonic stem cells. They are specialized to replenish specific tissues we need to maintain ourselves, like blood, bone, skin, and muscle. As we age, however, this repair system begins to break down.
What we've learned recently is there is a clock, if you will, inside the cells that actually changes, or if you will, ticks as each year goes by. And as that happens, certain genes get turned off and other genes get turned on.
Our DNA is not frozen over our lifetime. Our environment and the choices we make influence and change our genetic profile.
So if we live in a healthy environment, that genetic clock is slower. If we live in an unhealthy or stressful environment, the genetic clock accelerates.
think of the DNA inside one of our body's stem cells like a newspaper.
So this morning, I picked up this newspaper in my driveway, and I have a nice clean newspaper, but I might drop that newspaper in the street and it might wrinkle or get dirty. Well, as the day goes on, I might spill some coffee on this newspaper. It might even rain this afternoon. The key thing here is I'm not going to be able to get another copy of this newspaper. But as we age, what happens to those young cells is the letters on that DNA start to get damaged from normal aging, from the environment, and that newspaper, or if you will, that cell, becomes less efficient. We really can't read the information, and that cell then can't make accurate copies of itself, which then rapidly accelerates the aging process.
But Vincent believes this aging process can be reversed. His research team at the Cell Health Institute claims it has already begun rolling back the cellular clock on our body's natural supply of stem cells.
What we're really doing is using the proteins from younger cells from another person to reprogram older cells, okay, from a different person. What we've seen already in our early studies is that those senescent genes that produce inflammatory compounds and things that are directly related to cancer have actually been reversed. They've been turned off. So that's been a very good sign that most likely, in the long run, this will certainly be a safe therapy in the next few years.
So basically what I'm trying to show you is the core concept behind not just the future of stem cell therapy, but even the future of what we term supplements. And that whole science is based on the new area called epigenetics, meaning how do we turn genes on and off, and how do we target specific groups of genes that we know are involved in the cellular aging process. Okay, so let's roll this video, and I'll talk through this. So the human body is made of approximately 100 trillion cells. Each cell contains approximately 10 feet of DNA. There's roughly 30,000 genes. In each cell, there's probably 10 feet of DNA. At any one time, only 10% of those genes are turned on and off. And our health is basically determined by this living functional unit of our biology, our cell. How well our cells work, how well they repair themselves, and how well they reproduce is seen in the way we function at the level of organs, tissues, and our performance. Damage to our DNA, shortening of our telomeres, are what drive the aging process in general. The production of senescent cells, which is mainly due to DNA damage, is the latest key piece of information that shows that senescent cells cause our healthy cells to age even quicker. So what's the real secret? The real secret here is understanding the basic steps that cause a cell to age and intervening along each one of those steps. Okay, so in our body we have our stem cells. Their job is to repair and replace our body cells or somatic cells as they wear out. Again, stem cells are not just in our bone marrow. Every one of our organs has stem cells in them. And we'll note in just a minute that virtually every month we're alive, the number of stem cells decrease and the functionality or quality of those stem cells decreases. So in the initial textbook I wrote about 8 years ago, and then the new version, which you'll be getting a copy in the back, we really had to look at what are the key steps inside the cell that causes the cell to age. And the most important step is really damage to your DNA. It's like having a virus in the software of your computer. But free radicals, which are produced by oxidation, glycation, which is really a process of having elevated blood sugar levels. Each one of these processes, like a domino, when one goes out of control, then knocks the other process out of control. So as your blood sugar gets higher, you make more free radicals, you have more inflammation. The more inflammation you have, the less efficient your genes work because the switches that turn them on and off are altered. So what the net effect is, if all of these things start to go out of control, you start to see the changes in your body composition, how you feel, and your energy. So we've come up with a therapeutic process that actually can help re-regulate this. So if we take a look, for instance, at how cells age, okay, it's really a dynamic and continuous process taking place in both your stem cells and your body cells. And this happens from healthy to aging, okay? So let's go over here for a minute. This represents our stem cells and our body cells. And basically, our goal is to maintain the optimal number of healthy stem cells and body cells. But as we age, the body then suffers damage from those four main processes, the environment, and it's mainly the damage to the DNA. Will cause that cell to stop dividing initially and go to a state called quiescence. It's not dividing, it's not making copies of itself, but it's using up your nutrition. If that damage continues, then what happens, the cell goes into what we call early senescence. Now it's not dividing, and it's not really helping our body cells repair, but what it is starting to do is produce these negative compounds that actually cause these healthy cells to start to age quicker. Here's the good news. With the right interaction or intervention, supplements, medical compounds, you can actually reboot these cells that are in quiescence back into normal cells where they start dividing again, stop making these negative compounds, and actually become repair cells again. If it doesn't happen, you go into late senescence, and in late senescence, the cells cannot be rebooted to be functional again. Not only are that, then they start producing a large amount of things called inflammatory growth factor cytokines. Well, what do those things do is they are able to be controlled if our cells are not too damaged by a process called apoptosis, or house cleaning. We have a genetic program that seeks out cells that are senescent and removes them. Unfortunately, as we get older, that program gets damaged too, so we're able to not get rid of these cells as efficiently as we could, and we start to accumulate those cells. If this program is damaged, then we end up with the inevitable process that virtually is appearing now more and more throughout the world. We end up with cancer. And cancer is nothing more than severely damaged senescent cells. You die from cancer because cancer cells are metabolically so active, they use all the nutrients in your body to basically keep them growing, and you die of malnutrition. Your immune system falters and other things. So what can we do? So where do we want to really focus? 90% of today's research is focusing on curing cancer, when it really should be focusing on preventing cancer and keeping your cells healthy, so you not only decrease your incidence of cancer, but you experience a much more productive and healthy quality lifestyle. So our focus is here, 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 and I'll show you the compounds we actually have been developing for 10 years actually induce removal of senescent cells without having to be prescription items. Okay. So what happens with these senescent cells is simple. This is a senescent cell. It's producing these tiny little particles called microvesicles and exosomes, which are nothing more than segments of DNA and RNA and proteins. The neighboring cells, this is a healthy cell, the neighboring cell starts to pick up these little packets of DNA, which actually start turning off the cellular mechanisms, genetic mechanisms, and keeping the cell from being healthy. The cells that are being damaged or cleaned out of the cells, cleaned out of the body, the senescent cells, are already being kind of removed from what we call the apoptosis or house cleaning process, are able to give back the good quality components of those cells, their DNA and RNA, and get that recycled. So if your house cleaning mechanism is bad, you're going to age quicker. If your number of senescent cells is bad, you're going to age very quickly. So this is what we call the bystander effect, or the effect of neighboring cells with aging cells as they accumulate. Okay, just quickly here, not to scare you off with this slide, but basically what we've done with our research is to look at what are the key genes involved in normal wellness or healthy cells, what are the genes involved in cells as they become senescent, and what are the genes involved in kind of helping to keep the house cleaning process and cancer at bay. And there's a number of key genes we're going to talk about in a minute, but one of the main genes involved are genes involved in DNA damage, a gene called mTOR, which stands for mammalian target of rapamycin, which has an interesting story. This gene, as it gets activated, pushes your cells into senescence quickly. There's a number of compounds that inhibit this gene. there's a number of compounds in the products we're producing that actually decrease DNA damage, upregulate DNA repair, and decrease free radicals. Inflammation is basically what our senescent cells produce. We want to make sure we can keep this at bay. And lastly, we want to do whatever we can to keep our telomeres, our biological clocks inside our cells, working as long as possible. That way we get more healthy copies of our cells. Okay. So when we talk about changes in genes, turning them on and off, how does that really work? Well, it's really not that complicated. In a young gene, this is the start region of the gene. This is what we call the junk DNA, which is really not junk. Now, the start gene when we're young has very few of these little, what we call methylation groups, which is a CH3 group on them. So when there's very few of these little sites occupied, that gene is active. So it's turned on and is doing everything it needs to do. Decade by decade, year by year, the methyl groups from the other part of your DNA start to transfer themselves and stick onto the start region and turn it off. That's basically how gene expression is turned on and off. When you're young, you have very few methyl groups. When you're old, you have a lot of methyl groups. And there's compounds that have been developed that actually help demethylate this and demethylate the promoter region and put them back on the other areas of your DNA, so your genes get turned on and off. Each specific compound, whether it's curcumin, whether it's green tea extract, whether it's green barley grass, has an affinity for different types of genes to turn these genes on and off. And that's really the science of epigenetics. If you exercise regularly, you meditate, you change your gene expression. If you're stressed, you promote methyl groups on your gene start region and you turn off certain genes. Okay. Now, when we looked at stem cells in our research, you don't have to know what this is saying, but basically, as we age, not just our body's genes change, our stem cells genes get turned on and off. So here you'll see in red, these get turned up. So in general, what happens in stem cells is your DNA repair genes, and blue gets turned down. Your DNA repair genes get turned down. Your chromatin, which surrounds your DNA, gets turned down. Your inflammatory markers get turned down. Okay, and here your inflammatory response goes up. Your protein folding actually gets hyperactive, so the genes and the proteins can't be used. So we looked at a whole bunch of things that happens in stem cells. And then we looked at where do they happen. This is early. This is up until you're about 19, 20, 20 to 50, 50 and older. And you'll see as you age, again, what happens is your DNA, your inflammatory responses go very active when you're old. Your DNA repair, okay, goes down as you hit middle age and old age. So we started to look at not only what happens in your body cells, but your stem cells, because if your stem cells aren't healthy, your body cells aren't going to be healthy for sure. So what are stem cells? Okay, let's take a look at that then. Again, we showed you that stem cells are basically your regenerative potential. They make and replace your worn out body cells as you age. Normally, if you're injured, if you're in a car accident, if you have hepatitis, whatever, those cells have to be replaced. If you have radiation exposure, so the sicker you are and the more damage to your body cells, the quicker you use up your stem cells. So why is that important? Because you're only born with a certain number of stem cells. And once they're gone, you age quickly and you die. So how do we fix that? It's a little scary. Well, we've already reversed that defect, and I'm going to show you how we do that. So right now, let's take a look at this. When you're young, okay, you have your body cells and you have a very large number of highly functional stem cells. Okay, and as you go into adolescence, you use up some of your stem cells, but because those stem cells are being used to develop you into a mature adult. Okay? And again, you hit a mature adult. This is what we call positive aging. Okay? This isn't bad. This is developmental aging, and this is where the genes are being turned on and off in an ideal pattern, like an optimal orchestra playing, Mozart. But what happens from about late 40s to early 50s is this. Your stem cell pool is really starting to decrease. The yellow cells are the quiescent cells. The brown ones are your senescent cells. And now these are starting to accumulate. And then suddenly, when this ratio of stem cells, healthy stem cells to senescent cells start to get close to each other, you age very quickly. And I'm sure all of us have happened to run into friends we haven't seen for a long time and go, gee, they really age quickly. What's going on? Here's what you're seeing. They hit that critical ratio, senescent cells to healthy cells, and all of a sudden the products of those senescent cells are causing them to age like this. Okay. So let's look at this, and this is an interesting thing. This is a young boy. This is a copy of his gene expression pattern. If you were to hear music, this would be a perfect chord on a piano. Now he's aging, the genes are changing. Okay, the blues are getting turned up, the reds are getting turned down, and he's turning into a nice adolescent and an early adult. And again, the music is like phenomenal if you're listening to a chord. He's getting into his 40s and 50s. You notice there's a shift in different genes again. You're starting to see the signs of aging. And now, at the end, his genes have changed again because of accumulated damage to their DNA, accumulated impact of senescent cells and their growth factors and inflammatory compounds, and the music sounds horrible. But that's what happens with aging. So where does it really start is here. So if we were to take a peek at a perfectly healthy young lady and jump into her body, kind of like Fantastic Voyage of years ago, we would see the cell. We then would actually see the things that cause damage, the free radicals, which our body produces both from the normal process of living, but also from the external environment. We would see the nucleus. And here we dive through a nuclear pore. And as we went through the nuclear pore, the first thing we would notice is, gee, here's your chromosomes, okay? And these chromosomes really protect your DNA. Okay, now, the chromosomes wrap around the DNA in chromatin. These are histones, proteins that protect the strands of DNA. And right here, what you're going to see is the origin of the aging process, which is basically a single-strand double break in your DNA, a single-strand break in your DNA. That occurs about 20 million to 50 million times a day. And when you're young, you can repair this defect with DNA polymerase and a number of other intrinsic genetic programs very, very easily. When you hit about 40, you start to, because of damage to the genetic software, you don't repair so well. If you have chemotherapy or radiation therapy, you develop double-strand DNA breaks, which are much harder to fix. As you get older, the DNA not only gets damaged, it gets translocated, it gets mutated, it gets deleted, and it gets intercalated or flipped around. So when we talk about DNA damage, it's not just there's a little break in the chain. The segments of DNA can get damaged all different ways. And the secret is to keep that damage from A, happening, and B, upregulate your repair mechanism. Now, a compound, we spent 12 years exploring this compound from the Amazon, which has remarkable properties. And it's an extract of cat's claw. It is not cat's claw, but it's a specific fragment of cat's claw that has a number of unique properties. In the University of Lund in Sweden, we studied this. There's 40 publications in peer-reviewed journals that document its unbelievable efficacy in repairing DNA, inducing apoptosis, inhibiting the inflammatory cascade in inflammatory compounds, as well as a host of other things. So this compound is an integral part of our healthy cell problem. Okay. But so why is DNA damage so important? Okay, this is a young boy who's born with a DNA repair defect. This is called progeria, or Hutchinson-Gilford disease. It affects a very, very small, group of people in our population, but it's also been used to study aging. So when you're born with a defect in your DNA repair mechanism, you basically age thousands of times quicker than the average person. So from 16 to 21 you'll see a big difference. Most of these poor children who are born with the disease don't make it into their late 20s. So aside from this, there's other diseases. Some of my colleagues know about them, where your skin ages quickly. Xeroderma pigmentosa, with, again, another DNA repair defect. So when we're looking at DNA repair, to me, and most of us in the research world, it's one of the most important things to focus on to keep ourselves healthy. Okay. On the other hand, you have a gentleman like this who's 105, running the 100-meter dash in Japan, who, when you tested his blood, his DNA repair mechanism happened to be 3 or 4 times better than the average person. Now, of course, his diet was better, and we also know that in certain areas of the world, people have extended longevities. And a lot of that has to do with their diet, their exercise, but also their genetics when they're all put together. So what we're really talking about is, we're talking about epigenetics. We're not talking about removing and inserting genes. We're talking about how do we take the genes that we have, make them work better, and how, now that we're just at the forefront of learning to turn the switches on and off for the right groups of genes, how do we apply that today? So epigenetics, let's take a look at how it would actually work inside you. So let's say you have a specific compound, like the compound we talked about, AC11, these little red dots. They would float around your circulatory system, get into the cell, into the DNA, go through that nuclear pore, go right into the nucleus, and basically what they do is they open up the folding of the DNA, they open up the chromatin. And by doing that, a methyl group can get in here or be removed. And that's basically the very basic mechanism of how we can alter and change genes, positively or negative, by getting certain compounds in here that will either start the DNA repair gene or turn it off, or inhibit inflammatory compounds or turn them on. Fatty acids work this way. By decreasing inflammation, they get into the gene and actually alter how genes get turned on and off. So the key question that arose was, you know, where do we get the right combinations of things, and how do we know which ones to use? DNA damage, by the way, also causes key changes to your genes, okay? And if your damage is excessive, you end up with a problem in both your somatic and your stem cell pools. And again, we talked about how these changes in those methyl groups turn genes on and off. The key genes that we've been looking at are genes that are involved in the genes that make senescence, that gene is called mTOR. NF-kappa B, TNF-alpha, I'm going to talk dirty here for some of the doctors here who know some of these genes, P53, P16, P16-INK4A, beta-galactosidase, a whole bunch of these compounds are activated during the normal cellular aging process. Well, we've chosen compounds that can actually inhibit or keep those genes from working. So, again, looking at DNA repair, apoptosis, inflammatory responses, when you control those, the hormones that your body normally makes work more efficiently, and you actually make more of your own hormones. So all of these things fit together. So why should you be offering supplements as a healthcare professional? Okay, well, let's talk about this for a minute, because I think this is one of the reasons why most of you are here, right? So basically, the human body was designed to run on natural fuel from plants, from herbs, from vegetables, from natural sources. You know, genetically, we evolved over the last 500 to 600,000 years ago. There were no Burger Kings. There were no McDonald's. In fact, we know now today, if you run on the fuel of fast food, you're going to die quicker, have a miserably unhealthy life, and everything that you've been genetically designed with, as well as breathing the air we breathe, the stress we have, you're basically running contra to the whole genetic software that you as a human being were designed to run on, okay? In addition to this, the general industry problems, which is tremendous in the supplement industry, that is the lack of regulatory oversight, the lack of real scientific studies, creates mass confusion in anybody who wants to really actively get involved in supplementation. You know, people don't know what to take, what combines with what, and how much to take. And frankly, the average person goes to the vitamin store and buys several different bottles of different nutrients because they believe each one is good for them individually. What about what about the combination when they're all taken together? Well, we know that there's a program, a genetic program inside your cell next to the mitochondria called NRF2. This is a genetic program that normally your body makes its own intrinsic antioxidants. If you didn't eat it all, you would make superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase, and catalase. Those are the key intrinsic antioxidants every cell makes to buffer the free radicals that are being made inside your mitochondria as you're making energy, ATP. If you take too many antioxidants, you turn off your genetic pathway. Basically, you remove the muffler inside your cells so that the free radicals are being produced even more. So when people come in and say, oh, I'm taking all of this stuff and I feel worse, that's one of the reasons. Why? Because they don't know what they're doing. And frankly, doctors didn't even know about this until about 5 or 6 years ago. So one of the key things was to take a look at what compounds work synergistically, work with the genetic software we have, and are not competitive. So basically, with the product we've been producing, this is 9 years in development. This product not only replaces your basic vitamin mineral need, but is based on the science of epigenetics and targets the key genes involved in how cells age. Okay. So what we did is we hired a PhD nutritionist from a major university to look at what ingredients, as we created our formula, would target the right genes and would they regulate them up or down. So down, the red lines you're going to see are down-regulating or inhibiting genes, and the blue lines you're going to see are what actually stimulates genes or turns them back on. So for instance, in healthy cell we have a series of compartmental groups of specific nutrients and compounds that work in different components of the cell. So if you look at the antioxidants, okay, we've chosen specific antioxidants to inhibit inflammatory compounds, to inhibit the COX-2 enzyme. And NF-kappa B, which is really the origin, NF-kappa B stimulates TNF-alpha, which then makes all the inflammatory cytokines. If you can turn NF-kappa B off, you turn all the inflammation cascade off at its origin. Well, AC11 happens to be one of the most potent NF-kappa B inhibitors, which is the other reason why we've included it. And you'll see each one of these things in each compartment. We can go to the next one. For instance, in the mitochondrial area, how do we help our cells make more energy, which is why when our clinical trials went on and we looked at people and we looked at did they feel more energetic, did they feel better, there was a dramatic difference because we started to look at different compounds that would actually interact. For instance, in energy production, alpha-lipoic acid, benfotiamine, nicotinamide, ribose, all the things that help your cells make more ATP were included, and the other things that inhibited oxidative stress and other things inside of mitochondria we included to downregulate those genes. And the most important thing to me was the DNA damage, repair, and the turning the genes on and off, because right now, out of those 100 trillion cells, we probably have 20% of those cells sitting in quiescence and early senescence. Remember I showed you that? Because if we could reboot those cells, we not only make less senescent cells, we now have more of a repair mechanism. We can stay healthier longer if we did just that. So this component of Healthy Cell Plus started to look at how do we enhance the methylation, put those methyl groups back on the right portion of the promoter region. How do we talk about NRF2? Okay, we want to make sure that this key process isn't negative. Resveratrol turns on SIRT1 and helps stimulate NRF2. So each one of these compounds and each one of these complexes in this product were basically targeted at specific genes and to look at their synergy. mTOR inhibitors probably going to be the next big frontier in anti-aging. Again, we did a whole bunch of ingredients here, particularly the anthocyanidins, and I'll make a quick comment. Metformin. How many people treat diabetics with metformin in this room? Metformin is one of the most potent AMPK mTOR inhibitors. There's a new study out right now called the TAME study, T-A-M-E, which is looking at a multi-center study nationally, which will be looking at thousands of people. Why are they doing this? Because diabetics who are on metformin for years live longer than people who don't have diabetes. Because they're inhibiting senescent cells, and they actually switch on about 20 different genes that are ideal for cell aging. Okay, tumor suppressor function, telomere maintenance. Again, we did this whole thing, and I'll skip over all these because it's a little redundant if I keep on telling you, but you all get the picture. It's about learning what synergistic blends of compounds that are targeted for specific genes in the right direction. The Anti-Aging Solution is one of the 6 books I have out. This is an extremely good information on details on all these ingredients, but really supplementing the diet is one of the key things to restore the optimal gene function and expression patterns you need. So getting back to the beginning, now that you're all experts in this process of cellular aging, and by the way, you don't get cancer overnight, right? it takes 7 to 10 years for a cancer cell to develop. And the aging of healthy cells to senescent cells to cancer is a continuous process. So to treat cancer, try to cure cancer by killing a cancer cell is absurd. The only way you're going to cure cancer is to cure this, is to intercede here. Okay, because everybody gets cancer cells. The secret is to maintain your immune system strong enough so when you do get them, this process, the house cleaning, apoptosis gene, is in such good shape it just gets rid of them. And to decrease mTOR, to decrease your cellular senescence. So go ahead, can you hit this? So right here, the vitamin mineral industry has basically been stuck here. And we all need vitamins and minerals because that's what keeps your basic cells functioning normally and healthy. The big deficit has been here. There's never been real research on looking at what compounds can reboot quiescent or senescent cells. What compounds here can start to inhibit the production of senescent cells, support telomere length. What compounds can we give here that'll induce apoptosis? And what compounds can be given here to actually keep, if these cells are present, to keep them from becoming overactive so your immune system can hopefully wall them off and eventually rid yourself of them. So when you look at the back of the box of our product, what we've done is included these compounds to basically interact in the cell continuum at a specific site, and a little firewalls along each way. And this is a whole new paradigm in oral nutrition and age management and cell health. So when you look at healthy cell, as I said, there's ingredients for each one of these: gene expression, support mitochondria function, antioxidants, cell regulation, which we're going to talk about in a minute, stem cell health, and telomere maintenance. But let's talk about kind of the other thing you never hear about. In each one of the cells, we have a built-in genetic clock. Okay? So at night, your cells are really genetically designed to go into a slower state of metabolism and really function on repairing the damage they suffer throughout the day, particularly your DNA. So in this formula, go on the next page. In this formula, we put in ingredients that not only help you sleep better, but they help you sleep better because basically they alter your brainwave activity and put you from alpha. Right now we're all in alpha and beta, which is kind of mostly in beta. We're, brain chatter, we're thinking of all our thoughts. To get into deep sleep, reparative sleep, you have to get into theta and maybe even to delta, which are deep brainwave activities. Arginine, ornithine, lysine, a series of the other amino acid complexes that are in the PM formula actually puts you into theta. When you're in theta, you release growth hormone. When you release growth hormone, your cell goes into a high level of cell repair, okay? And that's just one of the things that happens. Also what happens is your hormones, particularly melatonin and cortisol, get readjusted so they're in a more optimal balance. So when we did this, kind of designed this bioclock regulation system back into the tablets, what we saw was interesting. In 8 weeks, we saw energy-wise, people got 56% better, and in 12 weeks, they rated themselves 75% better in energy. When it came to sleep, almost 90% of people felt much, much better. They sleep dramatically better, without Refseril, without all the other prescription medications which don't induce your brain to go into the right pattern and the right hormonal responses, but rather drug you into sleep. Okay, mental focus was another big thing. I believe this was our initial formula, our previous formula. I believe our new formula will probably be 30 to 40% better than this. So what's inside these tablets, we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, but before I say that, this is an article that I published in 2002, the Journal of Anti-Aging Medicine, where we first started to look at DNA repair. And at that time, no one said vitamins and minerals are not going to make DNA repair or decrease inflammation. Well, this was the first study in 2002 showed that we not only enhanced DNA repair, but we dropped inflammatory cytokines, which was the big product of our senescent cells. A recent study we did with a major university in Florida, and I'm not allowed to name them because the publication will be out shortly, is we dropped the interleukin IL-2 with significant p-values. We then did the same thing with IL-23. Go ahead, next. And basically, what I'm trying to show you is the reason we're able to do this is, in order to do this, you can't just add one compound. You have to add a number of different natural ingredients that synergistically work together in different aspects of DNA repair. And I won't get into the details of PARP regulation, I-kappa B, NF-kappa B, docking, and a bunch of other things we looked at. But the bottom line is, this isn't about vitamins and minerals anymore. We're in a whole new paradigm about how to impact cells as they age through natural compounds, which just happen to be the way human beings were genetically, how we as human beings genetically evolved and should be eating. Okay. So when you take a look at Healthy Cell, and I'm not going to go over all this, one of the things I just want you to understand is that we meet just about every certification we could. In fact, every certification we could. We'll soon be getting NSF certification, we believe, that will make it. We had to just alter one ingredient to really make sure we made that. But basically, the products are being produced as if they're pharmaceutical grade compounds. Okay. So the supplement industry, well, this is something that everybody kind of snickers at, even today. And I just want to make a couple comments here. So basically, no one can keep up with the logarithmic growth of information about, what's happening with the knowledge of cellular aging and how to put these compounds together in the right formulation. With Cell Health Institute, basically, I work with a group of PhD dietitians, nutritionists, age management physicians, most from major universities. And the big problem today is people lack trust in the supplement industry due to its lack of oversight, and people wonder, gee, am I really getting what I'm buying? Healthy Cell's manufactured in a GMP-compliant facility in the U.S. called VitaQuest, which you can look up, and we're going to happy to give you that information. The facility is inspected by the FDA periodically, a number of times throughout the year. And since the FDA does not inspect the finished product, we at Healthy Cell voluntarily submit its products to an independent testing laboratory called the NSF, which analyzes the product in a lab to determine three things. Are the label ingredients truly exist in the product? Are the label ingredients existing in the product as they are stated as far as quantity goes? And most importantly, are there no contaminants in products such as heavy metals, pesticides, and performance-enhancing residual drugs? You'd be shocked at how many supplements that you'll buy, CoQ10 and other things, that actually have levels of arsenic and harmful compounds that no one's really looked at and no one's tested for. So VitaQuest's ongoing commitment to superior quality is backed by rigorous analysis of products in their own in-house testing laboratories. There's a quality control and analytical development department of VitaQuest, which consists of 17 degreed chemists under the supervision of 3 resident PhDs. The VitaQuest Quality Control Lab performs analytical testing on our raw materials, including samples and finished goods, in a CGMP GLP compliant facility. So in summary, a lot of the things that you have been told about nutrition, diet, exercise, they're all important, but they're important for a specific reason because we now know what happens inside your cell, your stem cells, your body cells, what genes are important, what ingredients should be added, and in what combination. And I think the proof of the pudding is just taking the samples we'll give you today. And I can pretty much guarantee everybody in this room in 3 or 4 days, you won't believe how well you're sleeping, the enhancement in the quality of energy you have. And most importantly, when you run out of this, it's going to be a major impact in the difference you feel.
I believe today we had a truly excellent presentation. It was just the right balance between scientific proof of methodology and how to do it, even the prices and so on. So I think the whole 2-hour presentation was of considerable value to the public, which consisted mainly of healthcare professionals in this region.
This presentation blew my mind. Simply put, this is the future, and we're all always looking for a solution. What's going to help us? What's the next step? And this is it. My son is in medicine right now, studying medicine, and I am like sending him a copy of Dr. Giampapa's books just because he needs to bring this into the future, like now, like yesterday.
And completely innovative, definitely the way of the future. I think the American Medical Association needs to really get involved with more in-depth knowledge of this stem cell research. It should be commonplace for a curriculum, and definitely something that on a global level should be incorporated with all the doctors. Definitely a great presentation today.
And thank goodness for Dr. Giampapa actually bringing this to the Western Hemisphere, because, I mean, literally we are behind. When you look at the studies and the research out there, what's available in Europe, in Asia, they're way ahead of us. They're onto this stuff. And thank you, Dr. Giampapa, for bringing this to us, because this is something that's going to finally bring us back to where we need to be, catch us up where we need to be. So thank you.
Yeah, and what better than to have your own personal natural cells to help yourself heal and do future wonders for your own body with your own natural stuff. Thank you very much.
I thoroughly enjoyed Dr. Giampapa's meeting today, or his presentation. I found it very helpful in the realm of anti-aging, epigenetics, and the future of modern medicine, which is obviously changing. Also, I think that this will be very beneficial for future generations, millennials, etc., because it will give them a basis of how to, truly take care of their bodies and hopefully get away from maybe the over usage of prescription pills, etc., and maybe get us in a healthier direction and help us live healthier lives.